So for travelers, what are their options? Well, the International Air Transport Association, or IATA, is working on developing a travel pass. I spoke to Nick Careen about the initiative. He's IATA's Senior Vice President in Airport, Passenger, Cargo and Security. And he begins by talking about how the idea of these passes came about.
Travel pass is actually very simple, and it's in its beginnings. For those that are fortunate enough to travel, which unfortunately isn't very many at the moment, to do so requires a lot of identifications, a lot of manual processing in terms of illustrating your testing, whether or not you've had a COVID test, and some within a 72-hour period for most countries. So that processing time, it takes time. So it requires you to show up to the airport early. It requires you to illustrate that you've had the test through a paper process. So really the original beginnings of this was around how to deal with an operational challenge. It's since obviously grown into something much larger than that. But the real beginnings of it was about the questions around what do I need, where do I need it, and how do I do it? And so we started that way, and now it's gravitated, as I said, and grown into something much larger than that. But that's really how it all started.
So then talk about the countries or the airlines that have started piloting this and sort of the progress that we've seen so far.
Well, we started about really in heavy lifting on this thing probably in the early fall. The first app, or version of it, was available in maybe the second week of February. Since then, we've been the first official pilot from an end-to-end standpoint will happen next week with Singapore Airlines on a Singapore to Heathrow route, where we will use the four modules of the entire travel pass on that particular journey. But we've announced partnerships with multiple airlines around the world: Air New Zealand, Qantas, Emirates, Etihad, Qatar, Air Serbia, and a number of others that are continuing to work with, some of which we don't announce simply because they like to announce these things on their own. But we're working right now with upwards of 40 airlines, and the numbers continue to grow.
Because a lot of people are wondering, obviously you have a lot of countries and airlines sort of trying to roll out their own version of some sort of vaccine passport. So will this work along with that, or would this be something as an additional safety check?
Well, I think our goal is to sort of set a minimum level requirement or sort of a minimal standard in terms of how this needs to work. Standards around how it should work from a customer standpoint around security, being pushing for decentralized technology, no databases. The information only resides on your phone and you're in control of it. Because we believe that's the best way for a system to move forward. We also want to make sure that it's properly integrated into our airline systems. Why recreate the wheel? Why make customers learn new ways of interacting with us? Why create separate lanes in an airport for people that have and have not? It's really about integrating into existing systems and leveraging off of those. So it's meant to be interoperable, it's meant to be harmonized, and it's meant to be standardized and ultimately the last piece is mutual recognition, so that we don't have to keep doing something different from one country to the next. It's a tall order, but it isn't insurmountable. We've done this in the past, and we'll do it again. But yeah, it's not meant to be the only game in town. It's meant to illustrate how it should work for everybody to chin themselves up to.
So then for people obviously suffering with COVID fatigue, a lot of us can't wait to travel, whether it's to see family or just sort of get away for a bit. What should people keep in mind when they think of these vaccine passports or IATA's Travel Pass initiative in terms of how they should still be conducting themselves when they travel, rather than just sort of letting their guard down, thinking they have a sort of free pass to travel?
I think at the beginning, like it depends on when you're traveling. I think, by the time we get into the summer peak, this will be done for you. And we will be successful in putting something out there that it's basically when you check in, book your flight today, the information that you require will be available to you. And you'll simply follow the process. But if you're going tomorrow, you better do some research, because no country's doing it the same way. And there's a lot of inconsistencies out there, a lot of ambiguity, and a lot of quite, not really certain what you're required to do. So that poses a major challenge. We're trying to pull all that together to allow this to be a little bit more, and to be much more seamless than it is today. You need to know what's required of you, where you're going. You need to know how to get it, and you need to know how to be processed to make sure that this is, we don't have hordes of people standing in the airport looking to get processed without an understanding of how this works. And we've got a few months to get this thing up to where it needs to be by the looks of it, and we'll be ready.
So then in terms of the challenges, then obviously you're talking about health information that can change very, very rapidly. What do you see as the biggest challenges and how are you addressing them?
Standards is the biggest challenge. You know, there is no standard out there on how to deal with this. And, you know, we're all suffering, like you said, COVID fatigue. Well, every country has illustrated a different way of managing this threat. And so aviation is not immune to that. So it's really getting an agreement on a set of standards on how this would work and getting governments to commit to it. You know, you know, governments are still focused on domestic policy. And rightfully so. We're not a political organization, nor are we expecting to tell governments how to think. But when they do turn their heads towards international travel again, we need to make sure that they're prepared and they understand what they need to know. And that's why a lot of this work is happening now.